A little more on the history of the advanced stats that we're talking about tonight. In 1971, the Society of American Baseball Research was founded, and Gibby, you talked about Bill James.
Bill James, he defined the term, so to say, and then after that, the websites began in the mid-1990s on the internet, and then Billy Beane crafted his roster using that, really utilizing the stat on base percentage. He wanted guys who got on base, and he went on to go to the playoffs 3-4 years in a row with that, with the low payroll. So people questioned what he was doing, but he had the guts to do it. Getting back to Boros McCracken, he's the guy who originally separated the defended balls and the non-defended balls. That was a different way of thinking. So Billy Beane started to think that way, and he implemented the on-base percentage as something that was heavily weighted, how he was going to construct his club, and it worked.
So in other words, Billy Beane didn't have the payroll that a lot of other teams had, so he had to find other ways to win.
Well, he had to he found value in players that nobody else did, and that value was they were able to get on base. That was the main element of it.
Of course, Moneyball, the book, and then the movie eventually, I think, made it more mainstream because there was a lot of pushback early on when Billy Beane started building his clubs that way, and I don't think a lot of folks bought into it eventually. They started to.
Especially by the scouts, because it has always been done by the scouts. But again, everybody began to focus on how do you score a run, how do you prevent a run. Not just your batting average doesn't really do that. They didn't feel ERA did that. Now there's a lot of really I guess dispute over the one loss record is a good indication of a pitcher's performance.
So again tonight we'll be telling you about the history of advanced stats, then the team building, and then the game planning, and then of course the stats that are used for in-game, and they're all different aspects of using advanced statistics and analytics.
And back in 1980, about Bill James set off for the search for objective knowledge about baseball through different analytics. Okay, so we've heard of Moneyball, and before Bill James, this has been around a long time. This gained popularity in the 80s. Okay, Hall of Fame manager Earl Weaver, he used to use index cards back in the 60s. That was the form, or the infant stages, I guess, of that, and he used that for his platoon system and his pitching changes. Well, back then they didn't produce the data like they do now, or have the ability to save it. So everybody had little books. They put the information in that, then you later process that. Branch Rickey hired a statistician way back in the 40s for the Brooklyn Dodgers to evaluate players' performance. So this has been going on for a while. But one of the first things we may all be able to understand was the first really statistical way of keeping that data was the box score. It's a tabulation of hits, home runs, and the total bases, which tied to the formulation of the metric batting average and slugging percentage. So that's all changing now as we sit here and as we measure the different metrics.
1859. Do you remember Henry Chadwick? He was a good friend of yours.
Yeah, he wasn't, but he's the guy who really, 1999, he challenged.
That's chopped to third, and Machado will throw out Castellanos, one gone.
He wanted to find a measure of pitching, but he felt that the ERA affected the fielding behind it, took into consideration the fielding behind the pitcher. So he derived that stats into two categories: events defense contributed to, it's singles, doubles, triples, sac flies, ground balls, fly ball outs, and events that it did not: strikeouts, walks, home runs, and hit by pitch. And he found a high correlation between pitchers' strikeout rates and walk rates, a medium correlation for fly ball rates, but a very low correlation for batted balls in play, which we've always talked to. Okay, so a pitcher's BABIP can jump up and down in consecutive years, while the whole league will remain pretty steady. So if you look at BABIP over the years, it's pretty much going to be the same. So he basically found out that pitchers had control over balls in play. Okay, but not over balls. But not over the balls hit in play. He concluded that you can better predict a pitcher's hits per balls in play from the rate of the rest of the pitchers on the team than the pitcher's own rate. Because all these statistics we're going to talk to today, you don't just look at Castellanos' 3 for 4 off of Miley. You try and make the samples bigger, and that was what he tried to do, is make samples bigger so you had a better measuring stick.
Victor, the batter now. He looks at ball 1. Well, we always look at sample size, and you know, we kind of joke when a guy's 2 out of 3 against a guy and he's dominating him. We say that kiddingly, but Victor looks at ball 2. What is a good sample size, do you think, these days for these advanced?
Well, 30 to 100. So I just want to get this point. So pitchers have control over balls not in play. Okay. So it's basically the we talked about it, and then but not over the balls in play. That's where the defense comes in. That's why they've progressed from batted balls in play. They're trying to take that out of the equation.